Hello, everyone. So let's talk about the judge in the Blake Lively case and his family and some of the very interesting pieces of information that I found on them. It ties back to Epstein and sketchy nonprofits and much more. Also, the judge in the Blake Lively case, his brother, who is a Hollywood director, has a very questionable piece of art in his home of a little girl. We will talk about that as well. So first of all, the judge's mother is Ellen Lyman, and she sits on the boards of many different organizations, including one that has a billionaire Epstein associate named Charles Bronfman. Now, if you know the Bronfman family, Charles himself was involved in founding this very sketchy billionaire's mega group that's very supportive of and Les Wexner, who was funding a lot of Jeffrey Epstein's operations, also helped found the mega group. Now, Charles Bronfman also has a daughter who was involved in a trafficking cult. Her name is Claire Bronfman, and the cult was called Nexium, and that's a whole other rabbit hole. Its structure looked similar to what Jeffrey Epstein was doing. Anyway, so Ellen Lyman sits on a board with him. Now, let's talk about some of the other nonprofits that she's involved with and some of the implications here. So Ellen Lyman has a BA in art history. This, to my knowledge, does not qualify her to sit on all these different boards. So that itself is very questionable. And then she's been working as a painter, it seems, and she published some books on interior design. But again, that's not really related necessarily to her work on these nonprofits. She was running this art gallery called the Lyman Gallery in Palm Beach for about 19 years. She still represents artists and is in the art world, but she was running this gallery while sitting on these different nonprofit art boards, such as for Arts Westchester, Dreyfus Foundation, and more. And this is a problem because being involved with for-profit art dealing and nonprofit arts governance can enable people to promote their own art unfairly, or engage in donor brokering, or manipulate the value of their artwork or artwork that benefits them, and can cause a lot of problems. Also, she's simultaneously serving on the Palm Beach Civic Association board, which is the island's lobbying arm to the town government, as well as cultural and media boards, such as South Florida PBS and Dreyfus School of the Arts. And this is kind of a concentration of soft political influence here by someone who's unelected and potentially not qualified to sit on all these boards. And it's using these nonprofit statuses as a cover, enabling her to shape policy, it seems, in one of the country's wealthiest municipalities. I couldn't find evidence of program expertise or published work or other things tied to her name that would indicate why they felt she was the right person to serve on these boards. So this pattern can kind of indicate that these were honorary board placements, which can be traded as social currency, giving access to shaping policy in public institutions without expertise. Now, let's just talk about one of these nonprofits. There were red flags with all of them, and it's too much for one video. But for the Palm Beach Civic Association, one executive received 17% of the total revenue, a salary of almost $400,000. They also gave 6% of the nonprofit's revenue. Very wealthy and elite establishment, the Breakers Palm Beach. This was for event location and catering. The board of this organization and some of the others that she sits on were larger than usual, which can indicate that these are potentially fronts for elite kinds of coordination and influence campaigns, officers or key employees here that had family/business relationships, and the organization indicated that it was engaged in lobbying, which could violate its 501c3 status. I also wanted to point out that her involvement in this association enables her to potentially further her own property and real estate interests. I'll also say that her BA in art history would give her some expertise to serve on certain kinds of art boards, but not all of these different boards, it seems. Just quickly, I'll mention a few of these other South Florida PBS was having multi-million-dollar. High fundraising costs versus impact, lack of clear accountability with the board consult. Anyway, let's actually move along to Doug Lyman's artwork that I just thought was really interesting to talk about. This was in his loft, which, if he's as wealthy as he seems to be, I don't quite understand the design of this, which he supposedly had help, but... And then you can see it's this little girl. Whose art does that remind you of? And again, by the way, Ellen Lyman, his mother, is now involved in the DC art world, which has a lot of sketchy players. I'm not saying that she's involved with all of those people, although we do know that the family has been involved with the Clintons. Doug knows Bill Clinton, talked about that contact in an... And I had made another video on this, so you can just watch that. But anyway, there's a lot more to talk about here. This was kind of a high-level video. Let me know what you think about this whole situation.